Well, welcome to this January 24th service, post-service discussion. Today we're talking about our congregants service, J.C. Pratt and Glennis Peterson, who's unfortunately not here yet, but we are discussing their talk titled, uh, Where do we go? No, that was Dennis's. How do we proceed?
How do we proceed?
How do we proceed?
How do we proceed?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a cue going before we started recording, but maybe we can just open up the floor generally. Anne, yeah, go for it, Anne.
I listened to it all yesterday and then listened again this morning and heard a few different things. Of course, that always happens. But JC, what I really heard was this word connection. It's how I listened again today to answer that question. How do we proceed? Looking for some steps kind of thing. And how do we proceed? Right now, we are just learning how to connect without being in that building. And that's where it needs to expand, because, you know, we could advertise in a newspaper, but I don't think the people we really want are hoping to expand with read newspapers. So connection is all I heard from what you were saying, especially with those people to whom we may not see or think that we currently see eye to eye.
But all those
Loved
people
that.
don't
Thank you.
go to church.
Yeah. Well,
no, but they read billboards. They read billboards.
Yeah, well, let's
No.
give JC a chance to respond, and then we can open it up for more discussion if we need to.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Go ahead, JC.
Well, connection is a really good word. The way I'm receiving it today, since I listened to myself and decided how I felt about what was said, it's how to do a wider connection than I personally have considered necessary. But and what will it take for me to become open to that width? Do you think it's okay to tell about Pat's upset? Okay, we have this deep friend, Pat, who's Black, and she received on her, I don't know, media, Facebook, a thing that showed, well, that essentially in a humorous way was putting down Kamala's beautiful outfit and pearls. Now, and she was livid when we got, I mean, we had a planned phone call and we got there. Pat was just livid because the person had once again, as in Pat's feeling, put down the Black woman, had put down Kamala, and she was just really hurt by it. Well, you know, we heard her, we talked, but what I saw was something that might not have occurred to me. I might have seen the humor because I'm not super sensitive to the feeling that Black women's dress is part of the way they feel criticized. So what I'm saying is, I learned in that first minute of that conversation, the depth to which she was wounded by once again having the Black woman's dress criticized.
Yep.
So I'm saying, whoa, people, that's a big, I mean, I have to realize that I really don't know in my own experience what might not seem funny to them or what might seem a criticism. And when you broaden connection beyond the people you actually go to church with, you really can't be sure how things are going to be taken always.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah,
there's some danger.
Laleen, I see your hand. Can I ask a follow-up question though? And that would be, does that mean that we're unable to tease or criticize public figures if they're Black, right? Like,
No, that's not what I was feeling. It
okay,
was, I was feeling my closed-mindedness, that I didn't even think that there would be any repercussions, because that's not my experience.
but how do we
So,
know?
okay, let me finish the
Sure,
sentence,
sure,
Michael.
sure.
So I need to understand that her anger is an instruction to me. Be more careful, be more aware, ask more questions. It means I need to not feel criticized by her anger, but to accept it, quite frankly, the way I would have accepted my child coming home from school angry at something and just being irrational. And I would sit with her until I finally found out what the issue was, and then I could be supportive. But not for, so the important thing is for me not to be criticizing myself because I don't understand, but to realize I have to be willing to ask. Okay, go ahead, Michael.
Okay, except we just fell into a very, very difficult space in the conversation. And I think I'm going to go ahead and bypass it just because I don't want to get into a into a YouTube flagging situation. So okay, go ahead, Laleen.
For me, what that was all about is that JC was talking about how we live our principles for ourselves. We're very watchful and very careful about each of those principles in terms of how I live my life. Am I compassionate? Am I this? Am I that? And the connection here that I heard in her sermon was, how do we take the principles from the I and put it out into the we?
Mm-hmm.
If you go through each of our principles and look for a way to communicate, to connect with the larger Roseburg community, with the person down our street, who has a very different politic than we have, with a friend, who got deeply injured. I think what I heard, and JC can respond to this, is that the way forward is to really look at our principles, and instead of examining self, examine self in community, examine community. And from there, how can we as Unitarians move outward? And the only relevance that that would have to the Pat situation, is that the person didn't make that connection and couldn't hear that connection. So, let's just put that whole thing aside.
Sure.
And come back really to what I think JC was trying to say, and I'm going to bow out because you can say it better.
Well, so is the goal, because Joanne mentioned something as we were talking about, or talking about how do we proceed. Not everybody goes to church, right? And that made me think of like the YMCA in New York City, which has become this just fulcrum for intellectual debate and presentations on like great songwriters and all of this stuff that is outside of the scope of religion, but they've been able to use their platform and use their space. And so, Joanne, to you, I would say that church might represent, depending on how we envision this, which is really what the conversation was about between Glennis and JC, um, that church might be a major aspect of what the UU is about, but not necessarily the only thing.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
There was a church, or there is a church in Seattle, the Yesler Way Church. If you've been in Seattle, you know that that goes into neighborhoods of that people brought up in Seattle, like I was, never went there. And the people on Yesler, I mean, this church moved to Yesler on purpose, so they would be in an area where they would have a lot of contact with people that were not like them, didn't look like them. And that's been one of the most successful churches. And it's like 30 years ago they did this. So they took the bull by the horns and said, we're not going to pretend at this. We're going to go live there. And that was a big step, and they were questioned. What are you doing? Are you coming here to change us? No, we're coming here to live with you, to interact with you, to connect with you. To me, that was sterling, because they learned stuff they didn't even know the questions for.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Glennis joined us after we had started. And so I wanted to give, since you were one of the presenters, Glennis, I wanted to give you a chance to respond to anything that's been said, and then maybe we'll go to Martha.
Well, I honestly don't really have much of a response other than just to add to it. I think that it is time, it's a great time right now to start thinking of what we want to do with our church, and or how we want to live in this world as a Unitarian. So because we're closed now, many of us have a lot more time than we actually need. So I think that one thing that we can be doing is to try to visualize what we want to be in the future.
Fair enough. Yeah. Go ahead, Martha. And real quick, actually, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Martha. I apologize. I have been rewatching these conversations, and the number of times that I have missed somebody meekly, like raising their hand and trying to get in, is embarrassing to me. So if one of you sees somebody that I'm ignoring, could you please mention it either in the chat or make a big scene? Sorry, go ahead, Martha.
Well, what I just wanted to say is what we were trying to do prior to closing shop, as it were. We were opening up the church for other things.
Mm-hmm.
Michael had a very successful grief group going, your open mic, the AEO is another way of the outreach, to have other things happen with people that not necessarily attend. But I see the church as being like you're talking about the YMCA in New York, maybe not to that extent, but I think that we should continue our outreach with other activities that would welcome other people of different ages and different interests. And perhaps they would not maybe attend, but they would at least be aware, and through a subtle osmosis kind of thing, maybe would become involved. But it takes a while for someone who hasn't stepped foot in a congregation their entire life because of whatever bad experience or, not really knowing. I think I look at outreach with the activities that we had and piggyback on those as a way to go forward. That's my 2 cents.
Love it.
Yeah. Well,
it takes commitment,
But yeah.
Yeah. So we can't be like the Y. I call that just thinking small, Martha.
I didn't say that. I
I'm
didn't
teasing.
mean thinking small, but I mean, we don't have the population
I
of
know.
the Y.
I'm
Right.
I'm joking. I'm
joking.
teasing you.
No.
Well, on that topic, there's been a lot of talk, politically and socially about unity. And how do we achieve that? Because I think regardless of what your political disposition is, I think we all recognize that we're in some level of a crisis of division in our population. And how do we go about mending that rift?
I have an experience that I can relate. If I don't know, I didn't see the chat. Maybe I'm jumping out of turn. But yesterday, see, I'm in a band that is, they play a lot of metal, and I actually like to do that, but they're also pretty much on the right. And we've gotten into some political discussions, especially yesterday. And it's turning out that the more I talk, the more I humanize myself with these guys. You know, that they realize that I am not the wonky person that's trying to do something weird at the cow. You know, they lump us all, a lot of them lump us all together. And they're starting to, especially one of them is starting to see, and I'm starting to see in him, he's not on the right, he's a centrist. And actually he's got, makes a lot of sense, you know, but I told him yesterday that I'm not, because he was talking about, you know, being over religion, you know, too much of the evangelical stuff. And I said to him that that's why I'm a Unitarian. And he just, wow, that's pretty cool. You know, I think he had some kind of idea of who we are. So I think it takes talking. One-on-one, it takes talking and humanizing each other to help bring the divide closed.
So by speaking with somebody of maybe some of opposing viewpoints, you humanized yourself to them, right?
And vice versa.
Okay,
Yes.
and that's, you know, I think we're due for some self-reflection on, you know, how we, either as a church or as individuals, have painted broad brushes of people who don't think like we do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, is anybody here willing to self-reflect with me on that? Yeah. Okay, go for it, JC.
I think that I do that a lot. A friend came the other day and sat in my living room because I don't know where Laleen was. And I heard her sing. I'm realizing that where love is concerned, I have some trust issues.
Mm-hmm.
And she said before, somewhere down the next few times, she said, well, I certainly got to know you better when you told me that you had trust issues where love is concerned. And I said to myself, well, not only you, I know myself better too,
Mm-hmm.
because having trust issues with love is real different than having issues with love. And so I learned something about myself as
Mm-hmm.
well. Is that what you meant, Michael?
It could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why not? I mean, I think any level of self-discovery is always valuable. Yeah.
Well, and where that regard in the issue of unity or anything else we're going to talk about of how shall we be,
Mm-hmm.
the word comes to mind is respect. And we've lived with a lot of non-respect,
Mm-hmm.
not just disrespect, but non-respect. And if I respect a person, like Glennis is saying, they can say whatever they believe, and I don't get offended by that. That's, oh, okay, believing that is part of you, and I know that. And yet it sounds to me, Glennis, like you and these other guys are getting down some levels. You're actually getting to know each other better because you stayed together, drawn together by your music. So the people are learning to take care of each other to some degree.
Here's what the ending of what happened to that. The wife of the drummer who lives in the place we were rehearsing brought in, I hate to admit this, but she brought in a shot of whiskey for all of us. And they're
great.
like, well, who do we drink to? Trump's gone or whatever. And I said, to success. And they said, what? And I said, look, I hoped for Trump to be, I was against him, but I hoped that once he was in office, that there would be success for our country. That's all I really want. And I said, success. And they said, to success. You know, so I
Right.
think that was something that, you know, they're starting to see that maybe it isn't about politics. It's about what really happens. And we'll see. You know, we'll see. But we did make some inroads yesterday, and I feel better about it.
Good.
Well, thank you. That's a really good example of what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Anne, did I see your hand go up? Did I miss? There was something in the chat.
As I was listening to the conversation before my hand went up, I just flashed back to during the last year when I have just cut ties with some people on Facebook that I have known, 30 years, because I just couldn't talk with them. There was no talking with them, but I wonder how much difference there would be when, again, you have that in-person connection. You're sitting there and talking with these guys. You play music with these guys. Like, somehow to me, it'd be easier, I think, to have this discussion with some of those old friends, over a card game or over a pizza, than it is in who's got the fastest nasty quip on Facebook.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of nasty quips. I have made some real good zingers over the last 4 years.
Yeah, me
And
too.
they should never leave this house. Should never be said out, because they were deeply disrespectful.
Yep.
Very judgmental. Very
guilty.
right. So all of those things are not for public use.
Yes.
But at the same time, we've got to be able to vent in private,
Right.
and yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
are some things that
But there's
really
a
ought to be
difference
done in
between-
private, Michael.
Yeah, there's a difference between venting and contributing to the conversation. And Glennis is sharing how their conversations are changing, because this is not the first conversation with these guys that I have heard about.
Yeah.
Right.
And things are changing, and they are getting to the place where she can affect even the way they're expecting to be described by her, and vice versa.
Right. Martha wanted to speak.
I just wanted to, to continue on my thoughts for that other issues that I was talking about. The more personal connection you can have that is either vis-a-vis, by telephone, and not just social media. I think one of the issues that our society is facing is, now I participate in social media to a point, but not like many. There's a place for everything, but I think what is lost now is how many of us maybe had to sit down and write a letter that we didn't want to write, because that was the only way that we had to communicate with somebody. And, you thought about what you were going to say. And so many times now people shoot off these zingers, and they are really, people are surprised, both sides, as in, we have become like a one-note samba that has got to stop. And each one of us, with our personal outreach, as much as we possibly can under the pandemic. I have a brother who has thinks in one direction, but when we get together and talk about stuff that we both enjoy, it's a totally different conversation. And that's connection, going back to that. But it takes your ability to think at a higher level. And what was my deal with what JC said, because I did watch that on Thursday, was the 3 words: care. Now I've lost it. Cherish and
Repair.
restore.
Repair.
Repair. I had an incident at Costco that very afternoon. And the lady that was checking me out said, well, you handle that, right? And I said, yeah, it all, I care. I'm attempting to cherish and repair. And she looked at me, she says, what? And then I explained to her what I meant. And she said, I'm going to start thinking about that. I didn't know this lady from Adam, but, and the other person that was sort of brusque and sort of to me, I didn't know that person either. So
Yep.
It takes all these little steps, baby steps. And the more that you do,
Baby steps.
and patience in the community with your interactions, things will happen, but it takes each one of us to be aware of it.
I
acted as if you mattered and what you
You
said mattered to you.
It did.
You weren't
Yeah.
disregarding even the person who was short to you.
I can,
Congratulations and thank you.
yeah, I can
Yeah.
tell you from personal experience that my mental health has been so much better since I took Facebook off of my phone. Right.
Yes.
If I want to go to Facebook, I have to go to my computer. And so,
Congratulations,
yeah.
Michael.
Laline had her hand up real quick. It would be nice to hear from some people who haven't spoken yet. You don't have to, but I would love to hear from Kim, Juliet, Lois, Paul. John, did you want to go next?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Laline, go ahead.
Today's newspaper, today's issue of the News Review has an article in the travel section. The headline is "A Lonely America," written by
Wow.
a fellow named Stephen Hiltner. And he does mention about social media and about what he has found traveling across the nation. And other than that, I'll take my comments off the air.
I don't know what.
Go back again. I
Is he
didn't read it
looking for-
all.
The Roaring 20s.
He's looking forward to looking back to the Roaring 20s.
Yeah.
He's looking
Oh,
for
the Roaring 20s.
Yeah, that was a
Yeah, we
great-
are in
that
the
was-
Roaring
Oh, maybe
20s.
we're in them.
that
We're
was an
roaring right
amazing
now.
that was an amazing era for American music. One of my favorite
Yes, it
eras.
was.
Laline, go ahead.
I want to come back again to the notion again of connection, using our principles. But I want to look at it from a slightly different angle. We have a lot of important work as a society to do to redefine ourselves. And I really feel that our image has been badly distorted by the use of some words that have been hurled out in very negative ways to separate us. And one of the examples that I want to give in relationship to connections is the word socialism. I'm really excited about what Biden has done, Biden being a centrist in the Democratic Party, in presenting a movement forward as a movement toward the soul of our nation. Now, if I take that down to the personal level in my connections, before I get to me, what I realize is that while politically we were into an I, me kind of direction, our country was doing amazing socialist things like agribusiness, farmers giving away their produce because people are hungry, children making little baskets that they were taking to neighbors, elderly neighbors, because they were hungry, people doing visiting. To me, that is the soul of our nation, and that crosses all party lines. But when you take one word like socialism, starting years back, or communism starting years back, and you paint a whole huge group of people with a word that has a zinger. You can't keep arguing about the word. You can't even keep discussing the word. That what we can do with that is that, you know, by our actions, by our words, by our humanity, by our compassion, by our principles, present a different picture of who we are as a society. So my neighbor down the street, he had a blue flag up for the police. And he and I had a wonderful discussion about the importance of that flag at a time when police were being attacked. And that supporting our police and helping our police redefine for themselves as a society what their role is a way to move forward, but we can't do that if we don't support. And I believe that JC and I and he have a really nice neighborly connection across any political lines, ignoring any political lines. So I guess what I was trying to say earlier, and I'm still trying to say now, is that as we move forward, for me, by renewing my investment in the soul of what I try to live by, the values, the humanity, the compassion that, you know, are described in those principles, that I'm trying to be cognizant every time I walk out of the house of what that means to me. JC and I walk 3-4 times a week. I'm smiling and waving at every car we pass. And those that stop for us because we're old and let us cross the street.
Not in a crosswalk.
Not in a crosswalk. I mean, yeah, they get a biggie. They get an appreciation, you know. So what I want to end that with, and I'm done for the day, is I think that each of us can look inside, you know, and find those places that I come from, that you come from, and bring that outside and share that. And it is in moving from that kind of a place that we truly will be able to change the climate that we live in here in this town, that we relate to with our neighbors, be they next door or on Facebook or whatever. So that's my belief.
Yeah, so I have some expertise on this issue, and when Barack Obama was elected, I was still a member of the Communist Party, and there were a lot of people calling him. I think Rush Limbaugh or some one of his ilk called Barack Obama the naked socialist, and this made me very angry because as an actual socialist, right? The viewpoints of Barack Obama didn't resonate that much with the Communist Party, even though the Communist Party supported Barack Obama. And so, yeah, for sure, the title socialist gets thrown around way too much by people who I don't think understand what it means. Would you say that painting half the country as racist also gets thrown around too much?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead, JC.
Lillian has reminded me that as we talked this morning, there is a major thing that I'm going to explore, and that is the concept of how essential it is to being human to be vulnerable. Now, vulnerable is a word that has vast meaning. To some people, it means criticism, putting me down, etc. To me, it has come to mean that which makes me not perfect, and that I will see in every single human being I meet. And where we can meet in our vulnerable places can be truly sweet. And that's the reason that word compassion is in whichever principle it is. So consequently, yes, consequently, meeting a person I don't know is always risky And if I want to know them, I need to be willing to do this self-reflection back and forth. They need to know I feel safe knowing this about me. And you are safe when I know something that makes you feel vulnerable. And when I know that, then I also know what to say in the card I send, or how to be with you. Because for some reason that you have actually probably no control of, you feel vulnerable about your gray hair, or your weight, or your whatever, or the fact that you are actually uncomfortable. I mean, I'm having a little trouble getting the Biden people to realize I'm not a very active political person. My God, they want me to tell them this and do that and be here, and I want out. I spent the money I'm going to spend. I'm not spending any more. And you don't need to know what I think. You know, I mean.
I love it.
So what
It's
I'm
called
saying
delete.
is I get to redefine myself with them in my own way. But I'm taking myself back because I extended myself way beyond my vulnerability point. So now others have told me that they can't handle vulnerability. So, like everything else that just is, you're still vulnerable. Whether you believe in vulnerability or not, you are vulnerable, and so am I. And that's partly what makes us human. And all these people who, like the children, for instance, they know what it is to feel hungry when mother says, no, you can't have anything before dinner. I mean, even though that's just an hour of being hungry and wanting something, they move from that vulnerability into their treatment of other people. I'm saying this is important that we not, so that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, if we extend the metaphor a little bit, everybody who knows about nutrition, weight loss, and like body sculpting or weightlifting will tell you that you have to be hungry. You can't always be satiated and expect to be healthy. So,
Right.
yeah. Well, there's still a couple people. Lois and
Yes,
then Kim. Okay, Lois, then Kim.
I agree with you, JC, about politics. I just flat don't respond to anything like that now because, along with you, you know, I just don't want to keep giving. I've given them my share, and I just don't feel as though I need to send in money every time. You know, I see some article of, oh, let's get on the bandwagon here, folks. Nope, I'm out. But there's a saying that small people discuss people, average people discuss things, and big people discuss ideas. And I feel honored in being in this group because that's what we're doing. These are ideas that we have about how to proceed. How shall we act? And I can only speak for myself in that if I criticize somebody and it makes them feel bad, I feel worse. I feel worse about having that attitude. And I think that people are so conflicted today that perhaps they criticize more than they ever did before. And it doesn't do anybody any good. Because, for instance, every person, when they step out the door, think, boy, I look pretty good today. And somebody else will say, wow, how could they get out of the house looking like that? It's just one instance. And not only in our dress, but also in our ideas. People have bad days and they criticize when they're not feeling good about themselves. So when we hear people that always have something bad to say about someone else, that's a reflection of how they feel inside.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry that so many people are so upset.
Hmm.
So the best thing we can do is just to try to make the pathway a little easier for the next person
Mhm.
and honor them.
Okay. All right. Well, John.
And John, I have to go soon too.
Hi, John.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you. Thank you for sticking around. Oh, okay.
Well, you didn't stick around for that.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
He has the
So-
board meeting.
So
Yep, good to
yeah.
see him.
So JC and Glennis, you can respond to that, or we can go straight to Kim.
Well, I love the way you ended, make the pathway easier.
Mhm.
That's a good category. I think that's what we're trying to do, the pathway between me and people who have different ideas. That I think is something we can all understand. I like the theory and I've written that down with quotes. Okay.
Great.
When it
oh,
when it first came to I think it was probably my first rehearsal with these guys, and it came to light that they are all three of them on the other side or whatever. I actually, and that at that point, yes, I was vulnerable, all right, but I just quietly spoke my truth, and did not challenge what they were trying to say, other than when they were talking about spraying bullets, I said that would be murder. But other than that, though, the conversation kind of became, just a kind of quiet discussion of ideas, and it was so much better than just me sitting there listening to their MAGA talk or whatever they were, and not saying anything or getting into an argument with them, which was the last thing I want to do.
well, speaking of minority voices in this group, Kim.
Yes.
Let's.
Yeah, I have a different opinion. You know, you say we can finally start to heal, and I totally disagree. I don't think there's going to be any healing in this country, and I have several reasons as to why. First reason is, from the get-go, the Democratic Party, both government and individuals, have totally denounced Trump when he was the president, and even before he was the president. You legitimize him, you call him all kinds of names, you belittle him, would not let him do anything that he wanted to do, and yet he still got a lot of stuff done. And the media has been very biased in that regard. And the second thing is the treatment of the Trump supporters, and I happen to be one of them, has been horrible. It started off with Hillary calling us a basket of deplorables, which didn't help. And I've been called racist, bigoted, homophobic, xenophobic, and I had to look up some of these words. I didn't even know what they were. And we have been, because we wear a hat, a Trump hat, people have been beaten up, killed, their food thrown across the room. I mean, that's just downright ridiculous. Just happen to have a different opinion than everybody else. So I don't see how there could be healing, because now all of a sudden we're supposed to start healing. You should have been saying that 4 years ago. You should have let Trump do his thing and see what happens. Let's see here. I found AOC calls for a list of Trump supporters because she wants to see them burned. I mean, come on. Maxine Waters is over there. Get out there and go all to all these supporters and mess with them when they're in restaurants. That's just ridiculous. And now you're telling me that we have to heal because Biden's in the office now. So I even read about a pilot who threatened to dump Trump supporters out of the airplane. These are the kind of things that I'm hearing, and then I'm supposed to be healed by this now. Now, there's two other things that I haven't really investigated, but then we're also taking away freedom of speech because you don't like what we're saying, what people are saying, so they just delete it, destroy it, take away, kick people off. The other thing is, I think there was a lot of voter fraud in the elections, and it could have swung things the other way.
Yeah.
But no one's willing to look at all the and investigate all the things that were fraud.
Right. So, okay. So there's a thorough list there. And I'm sure that we could extend this conversation several hours. Lois, I see that you have your hand up, but Paul asked to go next, and we haven't heard from Paul yet. Glennis or JC, do you have a quick response to that?
Yes, Kim, I do. All of the things you've mentioned, no, they don't lead to healing. What I would prefer to hear from you and to share with you is what would seem healing to you. Because, I mean, and I don't need you to say it now, but that would be, if we had a personal conversation, I would want to know what are the things that would be healing for you, because I feel very sorry.
Impeachment, for one thing.
Well,
we don't have any power
over.
Go
down that, because I think in this room right here are people who would only really want to know what would help heal.
Right. Now we're running short on time, so and I don't want to cut anybody off, but I do want to make sure that everybody who can speak gets to speak.
Right.
Yeah. So Paul, go ahead with yours, and then maybe we'll wrap back around.
I just wanted to say something about connections and how we make them, and how our perception of each other can very subtly be defined by the media. I think that when you hear about these things that people do because of the pandemic, like putting together baskets for older people and this and that, I think that that's kind of a community response, and that's where the connections are made. But sometimes I think the media shapes our perception of connections, whether they're or deconnecting and being divisive. I think that a lot of public opinion is shaped by the media, and we have to be mindful about excuse me, about how much of an influence the media can be in our day-to-day personal level efforts in making connections, because our perception can definitely be altered.
Yeah, that's the better place to be.
Okay, so yeah, let's try to do some rapid fire. I did have one thought, Kim, that maybe this might help with what you've been saying. If there was some kind of scale apology, like if Maxine Waters were to get up and say, you know what, that was wrong of me, I never should have said that you should go and attack Trump supporters, would that help with the healing?
Start.
Okay, cool. All right, so Julianne, did I see your hand up?
No, but I'll be happy to.
Well, Lois has been trying to get in for a few.
Go ahead.
Now, okay. Go ahead, Lois.
I want you to know, Kim, that we love you. And I want to know, what is it that brings you back each week? I'm really interested in this. We do, even though we don't believe the same as you do, we love to have you here with us. And your different opinion is something that is worthy for us to consider. But what brings you back?
I think it's important for you guys to have a different opinion. You get into your bubble of what you believe in, and you forget that there's another opinion out there, and there's other people, other opinions and thoughts.
It's yeoman's work. Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage to be the one.
Yeah. Go ahead, Julianne.
The whole discussion centers around our first principle, which is the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and society over the last number of years, and not just the last 4 years, has been moving further and further away until the worth and dignity belongs only to your identity group. And we need to somehow go back and reset this. And I think that it's an important discussion. What can we do to demonstrate that every person, despite our varying beliefs, have inherent worth and dignity? And some of those subgroups are very unlikable. For instance, neo-Nazis, Proud Boys. Do we really believe that there is inherent worth and dignity with these groups? And
Well-
I would like to discuss this further.
Yeah,
Because,
well,
because some of these are so difficult. And one other thing,
Mhm.
I had the most lovely 2-hour Zoom birthday party yesterday with people from 6 different nations celebrating one person's birthday. There were 5 different languages, and mercifully, most people can translate from one to the other, and it was wonderful. Not one political opinion was the same, not one of them, and we could still join together and celebrate our mutual friend.
Yeah.
And have love for one another, because each of us had heard the other, either participated with this friend somewhere at some time and heard her mention each of our names.
Yeah.
And it was lovely. And that was worth and dignity and friendship and all that, despite distance, language, political beliefs, religious beliefs, all of it. And it was just an example of what we could develop overall in our society.
Right. I would have a hard time though if we didn't mention. I mean, I certainly wouldn't think that you would be equating the Proud Boys with neo-Nazis, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
They both groups prompt strong responses.
Yes.
No?
Yeah. That's true. And traditional masculinity has been a subject of intense scrutiny and debate lately.
Right.
So, yeah. Okay. We're doing some rapid fire. Okay, go for it, JC.
It sounds to me that we could spend some time talking about the acts of acceptance. What does it take to accept the validity of other points of view without putting them down?
Mhm.
In other words, how do you do acceptance? And that would mean that somewhere in what our church offers its members, there's some place where they're not just agreed with.
Mhm.
That they are asked how they feel about this or that. And maybe vulnerability could be one thing. What's good about it? What isn't good about it? Acceptance, the same thing. Acceptance shows up in our 7 principles. So it must be important, because Unitarians wrestled over the words that are in those statements. So if acceptance is in there, it's because it's important.
And I would say that is the strength of the Steel Man, right? Those, as Julianne mentioned, those groups that you find so difficult. How well do you know what they actually believe, right? Do you think that they believe the things you are told they believe? Or do you know what they actually believe, and can you articulate what they actually believe? And I would say that is probably the major shortcoming of the discourse that's happening in American society. How about Glenniston, JC?
I want take off on something that Paul said about the media. And one of the things that came up in discussion is that people are staying in their bubble. So if they like MSNBC, they never go to Fox, and vice versa. And I think the other thing is, and so if we come out of that bubble, if we stop watching the 24-hour cable news, because they have to actually fill all that time, 24 hours, with something. And so I actually have cut myself off even from the side that I support. And the other thing too is, well, I had another thing and I've forgotten, so I'm sorry. I'll let it go over to somebody else.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Go ahead, JC. I think you get to close us out.
I'm speechless. I'm so taken with how in the world we're going to talk about and deal with acceptance in a way that is helpful, that I quit thinking. I'm sorry.
That's okay. You know, it's a big subject and one that I'm sure we'll come back to.
Good.
Okay, I know my point was, one thing I did learn about political stuff, nobody is talking truthfully about their opponent. No matter what they say, it's not true, because nobody is telling us the truth.
Yep.
If that's not their point of view.
Except me.
So that,
Yeah, me.
that's one thing to remember.
Well, that was my other
It doesn't
point.
sound right according to the people you know who think differently, then maybe it isn't true at all.
Well, for those of us who hoped for a robust and honest discussion today, we were absolutely not disappointed. I can't believe how fast this hour went by. And you know, if this kind of thing interests you, I am hosting AEO discussions and debates where we can get into this a little bit more, maybe. So maybe you want to check that out this coming Wednesday. I hope you all have a beautiful week. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye.
Hey, Michael, stay on for just a second.
Okay.
Bye, Joanne.
Bye, my beauties.
Bye, everyone.
All of you.
Everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Let's see. Stop recording.